Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Hoplite channel. I'm your host. So we're going to give the lapel mic one last chance. If there's some feedback in the background, I apologize for that. I figured, before I trash the mic, we're going to give it one last go. But anyway, you clicked on this video. This is Marcus Aurelius, part 2. This is the second part I'm doing for the Stoic Titan Marcus Aurelius. And we concluded the last segment on Marcus Aurelius with some readings from the Discourses. And we'll get to some more readings of the Discourses, of course, because that was the best part of Marcus Aurelius, is what he left us to learn from his Stoic philosophy and to take those lessons and to apply them to our own lives to see if we have similar experiences with Marcus Aurelius, and how he reacted to them and how he thought a good Stoic should take those lessons as they come each day. But continuing on, I figured let's go back more into more of the life of Marcus Aurelius, the man, before we talk about his philosophy. So there's a famous quote from another famous philosopher, Plato. And Plato said, the world would be ruled best by the philosopher kings. And he said this in reference to a Callipolis, which would have been his version of utopia. That if Plato were asked, what would you do if you could take the world and fashion it in your image and make it as perfect as you could see? And in Plato's mind, the governance of man would be best left to the philosopher kings. Now you're saying, okay, well, yeah, Plato, you're a philosopher, so I imagine, you would want to be one of these kings. But I don't believe that's what he was referring to. He was saying, as a matter of course, the many different nations of the world would be best ruled by philosopher kings who could embrace intelligence through natural intelligence that they were gifted with, but also taking that intelligence and yearning for more on that perpetual road of gaining wisdom. And if a ruler had this mindset, then that was the best mankind could hope for as far as government would be concerned. And you say, well, didn't democracies start in ancient Greece and then move to Rome and then in the English tradition? It's true, but for Plato, the philosopher kings were his version of utopia as far as governance goes. And you could say that if he had lived long enough to see a man like Marcus Aurelius, he would point and say, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That is the kind of ruler I'm referring to when I say a philosopher king. And Marcus Aurelius, for all intents and purposes, was that philosopher king. He embraced Stoicism as a way of life, but he lived the life of an emperor. So we could look back at his life and say this is a good example of what Plato was speaking of in terms of a philosopher king. And there's a lot of support for his argument there, I think you could say. But unfortunately, life doesn't deal you philosopher kings like cards from a deck, right? There aren't 4 kings, there aren't 4 queens. Sometimes you get, the 2 of diamonds, sometimes you get the 6 of spades, what have you. And a Marcus Aurelius, a king of diamonds, doesn't come around that often. So yeah, it's nice to say philosopher kings would be best for the world, but how often do you see those people come out of the woodwork? Rare, very rare. So with Marcus Aurelius being among the 5 good emperors, as Niccolo Machiavelli said, Rome was fortunate just to have him alone. But anyway, let's talk more about his reign. What are the things that defined Marcus Aurelius's reign as an emperor? And we see, number 1, military campaign, right? We had a lot going on in Rome during this time between 160 and 180 AD. The Roman Empire was, reaching its apex as far as territory and its might in the world. And in Marcus's reign, the campaigns in Germania and in the East, in particular, were of significant note. As we found, Marcus actually died in Vindobona, Austria, which is in modern-day Vienna. So he actually was at the camp on the front in Germania and died in the field from natural causes, they say, but he died in the field nonetheless. And he understood that to maintain the eminence and the majesty of Rome, he would have to ensure the empire outlived him. And if it meant expansion, well, that's what it would take. The other thing that defined his reign was the Antonine Plague. And this happened in 165 through 180 AD. And I think this is a very good note for this time that we're living in. That in the Antonine Plague, it's believed that the soldiers returning from the campaigns in the East, that would be where Central Europe meets Eastern Europe and then the Far East, soldiers returning to Rome from these campaigns came back with an illness. And it not unlike what's going on today, had similar symptoms where the men would come down with fever and then flu and then just malaise. And then it would metastasize into something much worse. There are reports of boils that would form on the skin and pustules, and men would just become overwhelmed with the symptoms of sickness, of shortness of breath, of fever, and they would succumb to this illness in large number. So much so that at one point, Rome itself was seeing 2,000 deaths per day. Now, if you have to imagine in Marcus's time, he's the emperor of this domain, the cradle of Western civilization at the time, and even he can't stop 2,000 people in his own city from dying each day. It must have been panic. People didn't understand how virology worked or how epidemiology worked. They would just see people sick and then they would be dying. And they didn't know what was causing it, whether it was a curse from the gods or nature had created some warfare against man. But all they knew was that if you were sick, there was a good chance that you would not make it. And Marcus, I believe, needed Stoicism at this point in his reign, in his lifetime, more than ever, so that he could rule the empire with clarity of mind without being taken away by the passions and emotions of fear, of anxiety, of dread, of chaos. And it's probably due to this fact of his life as a Stoic that Rome was able to come out of this period better off than they may have come out with someone else in charge. And lastly, the Christian persecution during Marcus's reign was of significant uptick. There was a lot of persecution going on in the empire against Christians because Christ had died 100 years prior, or rather 70 years prior, and there was this feeling that this religion was taking over people, and it was coming from the outside. It wasn't Roman. I mean, the Roman religion was more or less paganism. The gods of Greece with Jupiter and Pluto and Neptune, but with what was going on in Rome with the Christian religion taking over the streets, many Romans feared it, and they thought it was an outside force that could potentially conquer the empire from within. As we know, it started with the teachings of Christ in Judea, which was a territory of Rome, but despite the territory, it was not quote-unquote Roman. So it was feared. But the historians record the response Marcus had to Christianity was not fear and it was not hatred. In fact, I think Marcus saw a lot of commonality between Christian dogma, Christian ideology, and Christian belief against his own Stoic beliefs. And when he saw this similarity, he implored those within the realm not to persecute Christians, to let them live as regular citizens would live. And it's believed that only those beneath Marcus who suspected Christians carried out this persecution. But the persecution, unfortunately, continued on. So these three things were, I guess you would say, large themes within Marcus's reign. And his reactions to them as a Stoic definitely played out. So we talk more about now the philosophy of Marcus, and we remember that the discourses, as written by Epictetus, were of major influence on the emperor. So the lessons of the discourses naturally would translate into the lessons of meditations. And the discourses and meditations circle around on many different topics, or topoi, where we get topics, but there were three major ones. And the three being, number one, desires and aversions, the things you want and the things you avoid. These have significant impact on our psyche. Second, the impulse to act or refrain from acting. So when you're given these desires, sometimes you are brought to an impulse to act on those desires, to seek those things out and to gain them, or an impulse to act in refrain, as in, I shall not take action because I want to avoid these things. Well, why do you want to avoid these things? Is it fear? Is it the potential that you'll fail? These aversions and desires are two of the main topics, and the third was the freedom from deception or bad judgment. In the sense that if you were a Stoic and you were above your impulses and desires so much that you could control them, obviously you couldn't eradicate them, but you could control them, you would free yourself from the deception of desires. You want this thing, but do you really need it? You avoid this thing, but is it really a threat to you? The impulse to act or refrain from these desires and aversions, if you need to act on something despite your wish to avoid it, you will make a good judgment. If you need to refrain from a desire and you reason with yourself and you determine that that refrain is the right action, you are free of the deception that you could possibly give to yourself that a desire is a worthwhile pursuit. Okay, so we'll move now to some of the meditations and select readings and discuss those and possibly wrap this second part up in short order. Okay, we go now to Book 4. This is chapter 35, page 40. And it begins. To suffer change can be no hurt, as no benefit it is by change to attain to being. The age and time of the world is as it were a flood and swift current, consisting of the things that are brought to pass in the world, for as soon as anything hath appeared and is passed away, another succeeds, and that also will presently out of sight. Okay, what is he saying there with that? So that one it is a good analogy in a sense that the only constant in life is change, right? We know there's that adage that many different cultures have stated, but you must understand that if the only constant is change, you too are in that state of change. In that you may walk down to a river, right? And it is raging by, and you see it carry by a log, a dead tree, and it comes into your sight, and then before you can follow it, it's all the way down the river out around the bend. And then perhaps something else comes down the river. Perhaps there's a man in a rowboat, and he waves to you as you're standing there from the shore. And just like the log, he too is passed down the stream out of sight. This is how life is, right? You can't stop this stream. The man in the boat or the log, they are objects on this constant stream of change. And when they come into your life, they're there. And when they're gone, they're gone. But you can't suffer these things. You must understand that when that log passes away, the rowboat comes after it. And when that rowboat passes away, perhaps a duck or a swan or something else shall float behind it. These things you cannot stop. These things you cannot move in reverse, right? I think it was it Kierkegaard? Perhaps Kierkegaard said, life cannot be understood except in reverse, but you have to live it moving forward. And that's true. The things we have in life are constantly moving, and they're always moving in a forward pace. And as they're happening, it's very difficult to understand what is going on and where it will lead. And it's only in reverse that we can understand. When we can think back to, I remember when that man in the rowboat appeared, and then I remember when he disappeared out of sight. This is change. This is constant. These impressions that come to you when they come to you just must be taken as that. and dwelt upon and regretted or desired no further. Okay. Second reading, we move to Book 7, Chapter 24, page 69. Anyway, enough fooling around. Out of Antisthenes, it is a princely thing to do well, and to be ill spoken of. It is a shameful thing that the face should be subject unto the mind, to be put into what shape it will, and to be dressed by it as it will, and that the mind should not bestow so much care upon herself as to fashion herself, and to dress herself as best becometh her. Okay, what is he saying in that very complex quote? What he's saying is that you allow your mind to reflect its state upon the face, right? So what do you do when you're happy? You smile. What do you do when you're sad? You frown. What do you do when you're angry? You grit your teeth. You ball your fists. Your brow comes down and narrows. This gives away your state of mind. Your face has no say over this. Your mind instinctively feels these impressions from the world and translates that to the world with your face. So he's saying, why is your brain a slave to the world the way your face, your expression, is a slave to your mind? It's a good point, right? Your mind doesn't have to be slave to the world. Your face and your mind, though, are linked through your nervous system. If you feel sad, your mind will belie your actions, right? Your thoughts will betray your expressions. But your mind, it is the only thing with which you can perceive the world and use rationality. It does not have to take upon the impressions of the world the way your face does. So it is better that we use our mind not as a reactionary device, the way our face reacts to our thoughts, but when our thoughts take in the world, we must filter out that which does not, number one, give us wisdom, and number two, lead us to virtue. Okay. Yeah, that one's good. Last one, and this one's a bit long, so we'll finish with the longest one. This is Book 8, Chapter 48, page 85. He says, "Is the cucumber bitter? Put it away. Brambles are in the way. Avoid them. Let this suffice. Add not presently speaking unto yourself, what serve these things for in the world? For this, one that is acquainted with the mysteries of nature will laugh at thee for it, as a carpenter would do, or a shoemaker, if meeting in either of their shops with some shavings or small remnants of their work, thou should blame them for it. And yet those men, it is not for want of a place where to throw them that they keep them in their shops for a while, but the nature of the universe hath no such outplace. But herein does consist the wonder of her art and skill, that she having once circumscribed herself within some certain bounds and limits, whatsoever is within her that seems either corrupted or old or unprofitable, she can change it into herself. And of these things, very things can make new things, so that she needeth not to seek elsewhere out of herself, either for a new supply of matter and substance, or for a place where to throw out whatsoever is irrevocably putrid and corrupt. Thus she, as for place, so for matter and art, is herself sufficient unto herself." All right, wow. That one, I had to sit down for a minute. That one, that quote really took a while to digest. And after I had ruminated over it, it made perfect sense. It was complex in the description, but the message ultimately is this. You go about the world and you wonder why certain things are the way they are, right? Why are these brambles, these pricker bushes in the way? Just walk around them. This cucumber, as he mentions, tastes bitter. Well, stop eating it. Toss it away. The sun is too bright. The wind is too strong. This staircase is too steep. This person is too difficult. I don't want to deal with them. Well, this is what nature has given you. And if these things are of inconvenience to you, you must think, what am I an inconvenience to, right? If someone is inconvenient for me, I wonder who else is out there that sees me as an inconvenience, just as like the brambles, the pricker bushes in my way, or the bad tasting cucumber. You must look at nature as though it created things with no waste and no want, right? If something like the scraps of leather that a shoemaker has discarded for a while later become used to patch a shoe, well then the shoemaker has found use for those scraps of leather. Even though you may see them as corrupted or garbage, everything will have its place. So you must look at nature as something that is sufficient unto itself. It is we who are parts of nature, who were created by her, by Zeus or whomever, that are to be used at certain times and put in certain places. But simply because you encounter something and wonder what's the use of this thing doesn't mean it has no use or at some future point will have no use. And as long as you regard things that you encounter in life with this frame of mind, you will be at peace with the world. Someone is difficult to you, okay, well maybe someone else, for them, they are a savior. This pricker bush is in your way and will cut you if you go near it. Well, maybe the pricker bush will also blossom berries and animals later will come to feed off these berries and gain sustenance. You don't know. But what you must know is that you yourself believe you are useful or you are in the world for a purpose. So too must everything else be in the world for a purpose because it would not have created it otherwise. Yeah. Okay. I will quit while I'm ahead with that one. Thanks again for coming by to hear me speak on these things and read from the Meditations. There are many more famous quotes in the Meditations, but those are the few readings that I thought needed some attention, and hopefully you were able to glean a little information, some insight from the discussion. Anyway, come back for part 3. We'll wrap up Marcus Aurelius. Maybe we'll do part 4. We'll see, as I said. But we'll definitely give him a send-off in part 3. As always, if you're liking the channel, give it a thumbs up. If you intend to come back for more, hit the subscribe button. Share it with friends, family, anyone who you think could use this Stoicism at this point in their life. And we will see you in the next one. Till then, take it easy.